Our first reading tonight is from the book of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 through 33. And if my thing would keep up with me, I would read it to you. Okay, our first reading. There we go. Okay. Hear this word. Immediately, he made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Will you please pray with me? Loving presence, thank you for these fellow travelers, for this community, gathered here in a shared moment on our individual journeys, all of which lead to your perfect peace. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts together be acceptable to you, Holy One, our source, our courage, our being. Amen. Dear classmates, it is an honor and it is a joy to be with you in this space. We've shared so much of ourselves over the past years. It's good to take this time to breathe together, to worship together, to contemplate together as a class, to embody this liminal space that we share. Now, I'm probably not the only one here who's been in a reflective mood over the past few months. Kind of comes with the territory. Not that I've had a ton of time to just sit and reflect. None of us probably has. But whether there's been time or not, we are humans, having a human experience of nearing the end of something significant. And when humans reach a threshold moment, we look back. We do our best to look at what lies on the other side of the threshold. And we feel out the space between what has been and what could be. Back in January, I was writing my ordination paper, a step on my path to ministry in the United Church of Christ. And the writing prompts bid me into a similar in-between space, and to talk from that space about my sense of calling to ministry and the strengths and the growing edges of what is to come. You know, the small questions that one is asked when one is wrapping up seminary, that have almost become normal questions to answer by this time. I don't know if you're feeling me, but almost normal is the key word there. Well, I don't know if any of you can relate, but these small questions in that particular context freaked me out. And as I wrote, the image from this passage popped into my mind of Peter sinking in a stormy sea and shouting desperately to Jesus, "Lord, save me." I could so easily locate myself in Peter's predicament, that space of what have I gotten myself into? And thanks to many conversations with colleagues, and friends, and family, and mentors, several of you in this room, that moment passed. I stopped hyperventilating quite so often. I finished my ordination paper and submitted it. And when I approached this text with a less flaily and yet still contemplative and reflective mind, I'm drawn to Peter's quote that got him into the water in the first place. "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." The boat carrying the disciples had drifted far out to sea, all night in a storm. Finally, in the very early morning, literally in the fourth watch of the night from the Greek, the disciples spot Jesus walking toward them. And in his commentary, Matthew and the margins, Warren Carter, the theologian, observes that the timing and method of Jesus' arrival, the sea, the walking on the surface of the sea, the waves, the fourth watch, evoke Israel's exodus from the Pharaoh, God's parting of the Red Sea, and God's self-disclosure of God's power in the book of Job, among others. And while the reader might catch these allusions, especially the very quick and well-read readers in this space, in the moment, that's not where most of the disciples went with their analysis. They think they're seeing a ghost because humans can't overcome the chaos and the power of the elements. Humans are at their mercy. But Jesus' words again evoke the Hebrew scriptures, reassuring them, "Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid." And again, hearkening back to Exodus, when God names God's self, "I am." And the myriad angels whose first words are always, "Don't freak out." And the text signals to the astute reader that God is again on the surface of the deep, that the veil between the material world and the larger mystery that is always just a breath away was thinning, a threshold moment. According to the text, only Peter held space for the possibility that Jesus wasn't a ghost. Not straight up belief, mind you, but openness to the idea. "Lord, if it is you." There's such a sweet but brave righteousness to Peter's request. Such an embedded understanding of his rabbi. And here's what I hear underneath Peter's words. I hear, "Teacher, I'll know that it's you when I hear you ask me to follow you into something that everyone around me thinks is crazy nuts bonkers. That simultaneously feels like the scariest, most dangerous thing and the most powerfully right thing. The thing that is bigger, riskier, more glorious than anything that I would dare to dream. When you ask me to go there, then I'll know it's you, and I'll follow your command." Friends, I honestly didn't know what all I was getting myself into when I applied to United. But in God's own way, God bid me to come here. And for 4 years, over and over again, I've been called onto the surface of the depths by our beloved professors, in my ministry contexts, by you. To do hard things, to ask hard questions, to dream hard dreams. And I've followed. I've stepped out of the boat in faith and in vulnerability, and over again, friends, my fear, my doubt, my own ego has eclipsed my own faith in my own calling. And like Peter, I've sunk into the depths. And over, a hand has helped me back into the boat to begin again. You may not have realized what you were witnessing in class, but many of you have witnessed at least parts of this cyclical pattern in me. And I suspect that I have witnessed the same in you. And I honor that. Some of us heard the command to move towards chaplaincy or nonprofit leadership or ministry or exploring spirituality and the arts for years before we finally followed that call. But however long it took, you all trusted that voice. You listened to its resonant joy and reverence in your soul, and you stepped out of a safe place and into mystery. And you've learned how much there is to learn on your path, and you've come face to face with the world's disillusionment. Probably you've had ideas you thought were world-altering that weren't. And you've lost your divine sense of connection. And I pray that each of you has found what I've found, a community of folks to do the work with, who at any given moment will show you the face of the Christ consciousness, of boundless belovedness, and extend a hand to pull you and your soggy butt out of the waves and back into the boat to regroup. A new lived witness to the fallacy of the smooth upward trajectory and to the sacredness of the spiral. That's what's launching me into ministry with you all. The rejection of the notion that we need to be or should even aspire to perfection or moving towards some mythically perfect faith. And the insight that the divine spirit moves through invitation, iteration, failure, questioning everything, and stubbornness, and most of all, through community. May we continue listening with discernment for the next command. May we trust that from our first tentative steps out of the boat to our last, we are never alone. And may we be the hand of rescue when the waves break. May it be so. Amen.